So, we are at the end of our 3 days study trip in healthcare in Denmark, and I'm very happy to have the opportunity for a short interview with Professor Kjeld Moller Pedersen. He's professor in health economics and one of the most recognized experts in healthcare in Denmark. And he was one of our hosts during this visit. So we took a lot of interesting impressions from that trip. And now one of my questions is, you have a very good working healthcare system. What are the factors that make your healthcare system so successful?
First of all, I think it's important that the Danish healthcare system continually adapt to new challenges. For instance, at the moment, we're trying to adapt to a rapidly aging population, a population with more chronic diseases, and that calls for changes. So one of the important success factors is that ability. And then obviously also the ability of politicians to be farsighted in their decisions, and not least that we have professionals, be they health professionals or other professionals, who are able to implement all these reforms and do that rapidly and basically in accordance with what the politicians want.
Mm-hmm. So we learned that you have, we call it a top-down approach in your healthcare system. So how do you make it to onboard your citizens, to onboard all the players, all the actors in the system, that they accept this top-down approach? What's the recipe?
There's no recipe, but actually you can look at a process, because gradually people become aware, experts and politicians become aware that changes are needed. For instance, what we mentioned before, an aging population. That aging population can and should not be treated in hospitals, but outside of hospitals. So gradually, by having these agendas that are being repeated by experts, by clinicians, by politicians, then you are kind of maturing a population that changes are needed.
Mm-hmm. So, and what we learned as well, you have very high standard procedures to establish reforms. You have a group of experts, as far as I understood, working for long periods of time together, establishing white books as the one now for your actual reform. And how do you handle because you go everywhere, you look at everything, you talk to a lot of people. How do you handle the deniers, the naysayers? We have a lot of them in our country. We also have the others as well. But how do you handle the naysayers?
Well, first of all, and this is a trivial issue, but actually you need a majority, and actually you need a solid majority. So we rarely have reforms that do not have, say, about 2/3 or 3/4 of members of parliament supporting it. So that is going to minimize the number of what you call naysayers or opponents. So actually a reform that is just passed with one vote of majority is not viable. Mm-hmm. So there is a recognition, if you need viable reforms, they have to be viable for a long period of times. Mm-hmm. In Denmark, there's also a parliamentary tradition where if you make an agreement among, say, 4 or 5 political parties, then it's assumed that it will carry over until the next election period. Mm-hmm. So you don't have this situation where once it has been approved, and then the opposition will say, well, tomorrow, if we gain power, we will abolish it. Mm-hmm. So that's also an important, if you wish, to sustainability.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We talked a lot about digitalization, about the electronic patient record, where there's a lot of work to be done in our country. So what is the recipe in your country to really create a working and highly accepted electronic patient record and a high acceptance of the population for digitalization in your healthcare system? How did you manage that?
I think basically, and I don't think it's part of the process, but the Danes are trustful of those who will be in charge of the data, how the data are managed. There are no misuse, and as you follow rules that will protect my privacy. I think actually that's That's the most important thing. And obviously, you cannot digitalize in healthcare if you do not have, say, digital patient records, if you do not have general practitioners who use it, because the whole digitization presumes that the underlying structure in healthcare is digitalized. And we have that and had that for years.
Okay. So again, thank you very much for this very interesting 3 days we had in Denmark, and we look very much forward to continue our contact. Thank you very much, Kjeld.
You're welcome.